brain.
Broadcast is live.
Hi, everyone. It's Nancy Reyes from For Your Canine.
And Joanne Soicki with For Better, For Worse.
Today, we're going to be talking about selecting the right dog. And with us tonight, we have Lisa Bataska. She has, we've worked together for many years previously, and we're currently working together again. And a lot of the focus is on behavior. And one of the things we've always worked on or always wanted to discuss is when you select a dog, getting a dog, finding the right dog for you, but also accepting the dog you have and their personalities and kind of valuing that. So let us know you're there. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to select a new dog if you're interested or in the market for it. And what are the things that are important depending on what your plans are and your goals are for the dog. Because the big problem is people don't, hey, Melanie. The big problem is sometimes we just get a dog because we like them and then we don't really think about what the breed does. We just like the breed for whatever reason. So that's kind of one of the things we want people to really think about. Hi, Heather, Deb, hi.
Me and my 6 kids got a border collie, and I don't know why it chases them around the yard.
So, hi, Sharon. And for those of you who already have a dog, or already have puppies, I know a lot of you have new puppies. One of the things, it's like, so if you see some of the characteristics that maybe you're not thinking are what you want or whatever, you can just learn how to develop that relationship with your dog. So Erin should be driving home at the moment. So hi, Erin, because she was just here. So first things we want to talk about before you get a dog. A lot of us are attracted to certain breeds or certain dogs for different reasons. So one of the things we have to think about is if we like a certain breed, why do we like it? And also then research it so that we can see if it suits our lifestyle. Because sometimes what we like and what maybe their tendencies may not really work for our lifestyle, right? So for example, I have Shepherds, Min Pins, and Labs. It's like I can't remember what I have. I was just with my lab today. And Joanne has?
Yeah, I have Dobermans, Vizslas, and Border Collies.
And Lisa has?
I have primarily herding breeds. So I have Aussies and a Shepherd, a Dutch Shepherd, a Border Collie, and a cattle dog.
So let me ask you, because I know, and I'll kind of share mine. So Lisa, what attracted you to the herding breeds?
I like their interest in working, right? So they're kind of ready to go. It's good and bad, but if you want to do stuff, they're on the spot wanting to do stuff. So for me, I've always liked that. Prior, I had the littles, a bunch of littles before.
Yeah.
And the reason why I started with the littles was because I got bit. I have a scar on my face from a lab when we had as a puppy, when I was young. And it turned out that I was afraid for a bit, and here I am, a dog trainer, right? So working with all kinds of dogs, but I started with littles because I was like, oh, well, if they bite, it's not as bad because they're smaller. Well, I guess that depends, right, on what kind of dog. So, yeah. So, but I like my Papillons as well. So
yeah,
eventually I have one of those.
Yeah, and I have Shepherds. I love their trainability, and I enjoy that. And the lab, I just like their very calm, chilled demeanor. So it kind of suits parts of me, right? I like the working dogs, but I also enjoy the labs that are, that are a little more chilled. So
sure.
What attracted you to Vizslas and naughty Dobermans?
So I had Dobermans first. And I met the very, very first one. I was doing agility with my mixed breed dog. And the first time I ever met a Doberman, I was like, that dog is really cool. I liked their energy, which if people don't realize that, some people, I always joke, Rottweilers and Dobermans are not the same. One sits on the couch and one you have to make sit. So, yeah, so they're very energetic and like they are just up for anything. They're kind of like always ready to do something. So the Vizslas then, how can you not love a Vizsla? Although I know you're not the touchy-feely kind, which she is with people. So it's really funny that she's not with dogs. But yeah, they're very versatile. They're willing to try anything. They love their people. They love all people usually. And then, oh, the Border Collie. I mean, it's so funny. They can be so neurotic and weird, and yet at the same time, right? They're just such smart dogs. And I mean, you could teach them anything you want to, you know. To untrain some of the weird things that they do is like almost next to impossible. But
oh my God, I know.
So.
Right. Well, and one of the things that brings to mind, like, and I'm going to pick on the Vizslas a little bit. Vizslas are wonderful dogs, but they're very high energy dogs. If you think about it, Vizslas are bred to hunt for hours. So, and they're very beautiful dogs. But if you don't have the lifestyle that's going to accommodate a dog that has that kind of energy, everybody's going to be unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so much. I'll just tell you this little quick story. You know, I lost all my dogs, and so I got Noah pretty soon after that. And even as a puppy, I was talking with Nancy on the phone, and I said, I think he's sick. Like, I think he's not feeling well. Something's just off about him. And she's like, well, you know, I'll see you in a week or two. She goes, I'll take a look at him and tell you what I think. I'm like, okay, he just seems, I don't know, something just seems off. So she assessed him, and she's like, he's normal, dummy. She's like, you're used to this crazy high energy dog.
Yeah.
He's just normal. So I was like, oh, is that what that's like? So,
yeah. Well, and it's like, because once you and Lisa can speak to more about it. Like, once you get used to doing a lot of work with shelter and rescue, your perception of normal is very skewed. You're
Absolutely.
like, oh, it's like, that's normal dog. It's normal. And, you know, it was funny because I was at a seminar with Suzanne. Same thing. The woman bought this dog presenting all these issues, and the dog was like, no, it's just normal. It's just a normal dog. There's nothing wrong with it. And it's like, we really, you know, when we're looking, it's like we really need to have a better view of what normal is or what you want, right?
Right. Absolutely. I know in the shelter environment, you know, with shelters and rescues, it becomes too, it's such a high stress, the brick and mortar buildings, it's really a high stress situation. So you're really seeing a lot. I really like, it's difficult when people walk through and it sets the dogs off and you see a bunch of arousal and some craziness and stuff like that. And then that turns people off, right? So, you know, now I know with COVID, when COVID came and so forth, they shut down, they went by appointment only and stuff like that. And actually, I think that was good for the dogs because they weren't periodically getting aroused and crazy and then presenting in such a terrible way that people were like, oh, turned off just by the way that they looked. Mm-hmm. So, you know, but it is a very difficult environment overall.
Yeah. Thank you, Deb. I appreciate it. Yes, I'm working very hard trying to lose weight. So thank you. Anyway, so one of the things for those of you who are thinking of getting another dog or are planning on it maybe in the future or whatever, I and all three of us went through some difficult dogs with some difficult behavior issues. All been there, done that. So one of the things you want to do is choose better and know what to look for so that you don't keep reliving the same issues. So we all have had very difficult behaviorally special dogs, and now we start to look for something else, and you start to really think about what is your lifestyle and what do you want, what are your goals for having a dog. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's very personal, whatever you choose. There is nothing wrong if you want a pet that just gonna hang out at home, be with kids, be with the family, all those kind of things. Those are important things, and you need to know that this is what you're going to want to do with your dog. Or if you decide that you might want to try other things, dog sports or whatever. So there's not a right or wrong. It's just knowing what you want and what your goals are for that dog. And also what type of relationship you want to have with your dog. And I think a lot of trainers, and Joanne and Lisa can speak to it, a lot of trainers they talk about relationship, but really, what does that mean? right? To the regular person, it's like, no, how do you want to live with your dog? And again, not a right or wrong. It's whatever works for you personally. And I think people don't do that, and especially going to a rescue or even a breeder. The breeder's going to say, well, this is what you need, this is what you want, but you have to be really clear about that always.
Yeah, usually like in the rescue community, and even with when working with breeders on testing for puppies and stuff, I always ask about the homes, and I'm like, so they want feedback to say, is this the right placement? What do you think? I go, here's the good stuff, here's the challenges. In the shelter environment or the rescue community, when I'm helping with people, I think adoption counselors are sorely needed in that area, but because either within a shelter situation, they're usually understaffed, it becomes difficult to really see who the dog is or understand. It's a matter of, trying to get them into a home because this environment is not the best situation for them. But I always ask them, do you have children? Do you have people coming over? Because even though you might like a certain type of personality trait, not everybody's going to be okay with that. Or maybe that particular dog is a little more sensitive to new people coming in. So, it's something that you have to really ask a lot of questions about. And unfortunately, I think people kind of say, oh, no, we can deal with that. And some of these things, as you know, traits are not able to be muted or taken away completely. It's stuff that people have to realize this is an issue. And then you get the other aspect of it where people get upset. How dare you tell me what kind of dog to have? How dare you tell me I can't have, I think somebody came in looking for a hound and lived in a condo. And I'm like, no, probably not a good idea. So, how dare you tell me that you can do that? But ultimately, I think if you're in dogs, you're doing it for the welfare of the animal. Not necessarily, it's such a balance, trying to make the people happy and help them find what they need versus with the dogs as well. So,
and you really are working you really do want to make both parties happy, the human and the dog.
Right.
Yeah. I have found that as well. You find a dog that might have some issues, let's say it's in a puppy class or they're young, or even if it's just in a basic obedience class. And even if they've only had the dog a short time, people take it so personally, right? Like, I'm telling you, your kid has a problem, and it's basically like, no, you know what? You don't know what you're talking about. It's like, I'm not saying it to say that you're something wrong. I'm saying it to say, hey, let's work on this to make this better for the dog and you. I remember I had a puppy come through, and the lady was like, the dog was cowering behind her. She's not shy. She's not shy at all. And I was like, oh, okay.
She looks like she's shy. Yeah.
She's demonstrating shyness.
So it's just funny. And I've noticed that, when we talk about kind of assessments, it's hard, even being a breeder, right? I'm not one, but it's hard. It's hard to, as a breeder, you've been with those puppies for 8 weeks and you know them better than anybody else, but it also puts a little bit of a blinder on you, right?
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
Sometimes you can make the excuse of, oh yeah, but he's just tired, or oh yeah, he's not normally
he's hungry, or he has to potty, or we just came from a long drive. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I know that, like with that, anytime I've done puppy assessments and stuff, and I take into consideration what they have to say. However, basically it's like, well, your dog's presenting this way. This is important information. You have to consider it. And it doesn't make, I think people get, from the rescue vantage, I think what's happening is a lot of people are, they become concerned because it's not the same pressure and it's really not a home situation. So they get a little more concerned about how you might be labeling the dog or what have you. And I'm like, no, it's a snapshot. It's an assessment of the dog at the time. You always have to be taking a temperature. So every interaction, and that's the hard thing when you have volunteers involved, trying to manage that aspect as well, right? To really see it. So with the rescue I'm working with currently, we do a lot of classes and working on understanding behavior, and please let us know what's happening. And it's a larger rescue. So it's really a little more challenging to kind of manage that.
Yeah. And Therese, you don't, she doesn't, but Therese, you're open. That's the thing, right? You're open to learning and having a relationship with that animal. But there are people that want specific things. And I'll give you a really good example. That, as Melanie pointed out, we have a needy Vizsla here. So the Vizslas, they always want to be touching, a lot like golden retrievers. They want to be near you. They want to be on you. So suppose you're not someone who wants a dog, constantly right? It's like that would become very, very annoying. And the converse is true, right?
Right.
If you have somebody who's wants to be touching and wants to be hugging the dogs and wants to be all that, and the dog's like, really, I don't want to. I'm not interested. It is difficult. That is actually a more difficult situation because people feel they take it personally that the dog doesn't want to be handled or touched or whatever. So it's one of those things that you really have to, you want a more sociable dog if the person wants that type of work, right? And it brings us to, for those of you who, whether it's a family pet, like you said, you ask for how many kids, how busy is the environment, et cetera, et cetera. Also, if you want a working dog for whatever sport, you really have to make sure you pick and choose the right dog for that particular sport that you're interested in, or adjust your expectations a little bit. If you want to have a world team agility dog, well, there's a certain level of energy you need, a certain level of resilience you need, a certain level of trainability and all that you have to be able to achieve that. Or if you have if you want to be on a world agility team and you have a beagle that just wants to sniff and hang out and be in the woods, that's going to be a tougher call, right?
Yeah. And, that level of performance too, it's so funny. We think about, the trainability piece of it, and we think about the energy piece of it. There's also that environmental confidence piece of it. That dog has to get on a plane, be in a loud plane, airports, long periods of travel, and come out and be ready to go in, 48 hours to run a international competition. I mean, there's a lot more than just the agility piece to that, right? And anybody that's going to be a world traveling dog.
Right.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
And I think the other piece that people don't realize is not just the temperament aspect of it, but also the physical structure and the health of the dog and the nutrition. I mean, there's so many parts in dogs that people don't necessarily pay attention to. We're having a hard time even just seeing some behavioral traits to say whether or not this is an appropriate dog.
Right. And you know what? And Jen, it's not a bad idea to make a list of the things you want.
Yes.
And it's okay to hold out for those things, because everybody will be a lot happier doing that instead of, oh, I love the dog, it's so cute. And yes, sometimes I've gotten dogs that I just felt that I was attracted to and emotionally attached to, but then I accepted the dog for what it is and who it is, and then be able to just deal with what I had, right? And I don't, so I think that's a big piece as well. You have you have to work and be able to accept what dog you have, and you still want to work with it, because temperament is the foundation. It's like, and then you can build upon it, but you understanding that the foundation, sometimes whatever that foundation is going to determine the outcomes on some of the other stuff.
Yeah, and that's the hardest part. And I actually fell victim to that, really truly, because Bam I was ready for my second dog. I really wanted the Doberman. The breeding was phenomenal, once in a lifetime type of breeding. I visited the puppies and I did sort of, a kind of off and on assessment. I didn't do a proper one, and I missed a huge chunk of it because I only got to see him in one room, right? And outside. And so sure, I got to see environmental confidence. I got to see sociability. I got to see all of these traits. I missed the dog piece. I missed, some other pieces. And you know what? Sure enough, the things that I didn't look for are the things that I'm like, I wish I would have seen it, because I might have waited. I love him, and I make do, but we, like you guys have heard me talk about, we live in a house separated, and I wish I did.
Yeah, because he, even though he's busy chewing a bone now, so he's happy. But so one of the things, so I I started with chows many, many years ago and had to deal with quite a lot of aggression. So I knew I did not want to deal with that anymore. Like that is not something I was interested in dealing with and working with in my house. And it was aggression towards people and dogs. So that's kind of how I started really learning more about dogs. And I didn't really want to deal with that type of issue. And some of the things you can catch, it's the assessments, as Lisa had mentioned, it's a snapshot of in that moment in time. But sometimes the snapshots will, especially when they're young puppies, it's going to tell you about who they're going to be as you grow up. And but it's no different than people. Like a sociable person is going to be sociable probably forever, right? Or it's like that's who that person is. Versus somebody who's a little more shy and reserved, that's who they are. They can be a little more comfortable in different environments, but they're still going to be who they are. Same with dogs, right?
Yeah. And, I just wanted to touch on this because Sharon has a comment in here that I really want to debunk, right? She talks about the sire and should I get one from the sire who has this trait or the son who has this trait? Don't rely on that, right? If you really want to rely on it and that dog has produced before, go look at the progeny and see what's coming out of it based on the dam that it's bred to. But genetics is a toss-up. And you get a lot of the grandparents' temperaments coming through in mom and dad, almost more so, I think, than you do with parents.
Well, and the other thing too, I mean, everyone should go take a look at that, the silver fox experiment, right? Because that took how long? How many generations? I mean, I think they started in 1979 or way back. I mean, it was decades of work before they actually started to see the sociability come out of these dogs. So if you're not familiar with it, basically they had feral fox and then they had fox. And what they did was they started breeding the most sociable ones to the most sociable ones and the most feral ones to the most feral ones. And then they started to see a difference through time and even genetic changes, which I think we dismiss that so quickly. I mean, when we're breeding breeds, we're losing some of these things, right? So we're losing certain traits. And that's why, if you keep breeding on the same type of look and so forth. And that's where you're getting a lot of people now crossbreeding over because they're trying to sustain breeds, brachiocephalic breeds. They want them to have longer muzzles. They may be breeding them to beagles or what have you. So that's a whole nother topic, but those are things people don't pay attention to. I mean, so, for example, I had Fling. Fling produced her first litter. They were pretty nice. It was a line breeding and meaning it was a related dog. And, but then we had some genetic issues going on in them. Like one dog was deaf, one dog because it was a lot of white. So it produced some other issues. The next thing that happened was then the second litter we bred, she was bred to it was an outcross. So it was a different dog. Well, that litter, I remember, I'm like, oh my goodness, I was a little taken aback because my dog Fling loves everybody. Now she's less dog social and she could become reactive, but that was more of a management situation. And honestly, it was a handling issue on my part as well. And you can handle some of those things, but in her case, I have her little daughter. I adore her, but she's the biggest jerk ever. I mean, I think she's nice. I mean, I know Nancy, you saw her, but she's not the most friendly. She's not sociable. She's totally into mom. It doesn't matter. Right. So, it's stuff that you can't rely upon just
even the best breeder.
Right.
Right. Genetics, because even the best breeders, even the best ones that I have that take the best care and do all the testing and do all the right things are going to produce dogs that maybe aren't the best. Right. So it's just, I wish it would be great if everybody can produce great dogs all the time. It would be easy. Life would be so much easier that way. Yeah. So it's one of those things. And Jen, you're right. It sounds like second and third marriages. You got that right. Because it's like, because sometimes you don't know what you want, and then once you realize, oh, I want that, so you might, hopefully husband number 2 has it.
Nice. Yeah, kind of going back to the silver fox thing, and Nancy, this is your breed, so this is just my personal opinion. When the slants back of the German Shepherd started to change,
Yes,
I'm going to tell you 9 out of 10 Shepherds I saw were fear aggressive.
Yep.
yes. I would
So
agree.
And it's a structural issue causing pain, right? And
Yep.
so, and they couldn't move right. Oh my gosh, I remember when you were in Melrose Park, remember? Oh my gosh, that was crazy that day. When I got to see a show, I was like, oh my goodness. And, you know, and I think they also talk about doing, what's it?
I said your head was going to explode.
I was like, my mouth, I couldn't pick it off the ground. My jaw was on the ground. I'm like, I know. I was like, I got to get out of here. So, but it was just crazy. But, you know, and I think too, then people talk about the different lines, whether or not they're working or their show. And that turns into a whole nother thing. To me, again, obviously, I want function. I want form and function, and I want a good temperament. Yeah. And for some of you that know, I've been looking for a Papillon for a while, and it's been like quite some time. I think I'm like up to maybe close to 15 years looking for a proper Papillon for me that I want. So, you know, it just depends. You're like you said, it's very personal.
Right. And you also want to, you know, you want to, and I think this is where we have problems. And back to what Jen said about marriages, like people, let's like we get married and divorced so easily. So yeah, it's easy to take a dog and it's like, oh, it's not working out. And then sending the dog, you know, back to the breeder or the rescue or whatever, instead of really thinking about what you want and really holding out for it. And I think Deb Evans is on the call. I know she's considering or thinking about a dog. Well, and I think it's like to really ask, like, what do you want? What do you know, it's not only the one thing, right? She has a dog that's a little reactive, but I think she'll be okay with the right dog. So it's a matter of like, what do you want? And then we can kind of work on with the current house dog that we can, you know, but if you're just going to count on, and this is what happens a lot, you just want a dog that gets along with the dog that you have, but then it's going to have all kinds of other problems. Exactly. So it's one of those things you want to really think about, what do you really want? And then we just have to have that component where they're going to be able to, where the dogs are going to get along. So, so what I wanted to kind of go over a little bit was, what are some of the things that, if you're looking for a family pet, what are some of the things that really, just a family pet that's, you know, and we can do it this way. We can do family pet for a young couple with no children. What are some of the must-haves and what are some of the nice-to-haves? And what are some of the things you may not need? And then a family with children, with lots of children, busy house. So what are, like, if you're a young couple and you would like a dog, what are some of the things that, and you have friends and maybe dinner parties or whatever, what are some of the things you would look for in a dog? Lisa?
No, you're asking me? Oh, sorry. I thought you were asking everybody. Like, let's see what they say.
Well, yeah. And you guys, if there's other things you would like, you can go ahead and post them on the
chime in.
Yeah.
I think, well, I personally would like to start with the kid part because, if you don't mind, sorry.
Yep.
But I would like to start with the kid part because what's interesting, so in the training and learning I've been doing recently, one of the fascinations have been the shelter world and the rescue worlds and understanding it a little more closely. So Trish McMillan talks about, I posted a podcast that she had talked about. One is what she looks for. She goes, when you go to select a dog, one, you should go with somebody who is comfortable with understanding dogs and reading body language. And she said one thing she would like to see with kids, that the dogs gravitate more to the children than the adults. So they're more sociable towards the children because you don't want, you know, the other question would be, are they equally sociable? I mean, I would be okay if the dog is fine with the people, but say, I like the kids better. I'm okay with that because that's a higher liability because kids do crazy things. And you know what? You can't help that. The next thing I would look at is the ability to, like, if they have something, is a guarding issue. So sharing things, right? So will you grab something and bring it to me and say, oh, look, here, I have something for you. It's amazing. That would be my selection for a family home. And then the other thing she talked about was handability, the ability to be touched and the fact that they like it and enjoy the touch, which makes sense to me. And I think as far as the other stuff, energy and resilience and so forth, it depends on the family. Like, are they a loud family? Well, then maybe I need to pick a dog that is a little more, doesn't escalate in arousal when things get crazy, right? So those are the things that I would personally look for on a family dog.
And sociability is really, 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 really important. Like,
oh, absolutely,
really important. Because what happens is, and I'll give you my story. My chow that I got when I was 20, he was in the back of the table. I had to crawl in to get him.
Sounds familiar.
So that was a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because he turned out to be, not very sociable, and was very aggressive to people. So everybody has that, oh, poor dog.
Yeah.
So if you have that poor dog and you tend to gravitate to, oh, I want to help that dog, then just know that this is going to be a thing for you. So if you have a big family that comes over and you have a dog that's like, I don't want to be around people, then you better know that you're going to have to make that dog's life okay. Right?
Yeah, I'll share this story. I'm not going to tell you what breed it was because I don't need to, but I was having a conversation with my chiropractor, and he was asking about dogs, and he's got 2 little boys and thinking about getting a dog, and what about this, what about that, and I the breed he mentioned, I said, I've never really met a smart one. Like, I just haven't. And he goes, what makes you think I want a smart dog? And I was like,
right. Well, good assumption.
Right.
Fair enough.
I hadn't thought about that. And when you think about it, right, if you have the dog who knows how to open doors and turn things on, and and you have a bunch of kids, that's like a 7th mouth. I mean, however many kids you have, right? That's just another dog that you have to really watch out for. If you have the dog that's like ball, 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 right? You know where they're at and what they're doing all the time. So it was just an interesting thought. It hadn't crossed my mind. Like, why wouldn't you want a smart dog?
Yeah, because that's what you want.
Right.
As a trainer, you want that trainability. Sure.
And those of us who are in dog sports, and we'll talk about that later. Dog sports, we want a dog that wants to work and is trainable, and you don't want a dog you're going to have to, well, some of us don't mind having dogs that we have to work a little harder on, but for general public, you want a dog that's sociable and you're right, that likes to be handled. And I cannot tell you how many therapy dogs that we come through, get through our building and say, I want my dog to be a therapy dog. I'm like, not gonna really happen, because the dog is like, don't touch me, I don't like it, or it's not pleasurable for the dog, and the dog genuinely has to enjoy that physical touch. And it's no different from people. There are people, I'm very huggy, touchy, and there are people who are not. They don't like it, and they don't find it fun. They don't find it pleasurable. But I
know that.
Yeah. But I and same with dogs. But people's like, well, he's got to tolerate it. It's like, no, he doesn't.
Right. I know. Yes.
If you didn't like to be handled and somebody's always hugging and you're gonna be like, no. Get away. Right. Well, and it's like having a Vishla all the time.
You're doing really good with this is still happening down here. I just want you guys to know.
Yeah. Yes, because he needs to be pet for an hour. So Mary was asking, what do you think of hybrid dogs? Do you think the trend will continue as some people want to have desirable traits of one and also of the other? I don't know. I think what's happening in a lot of the breeds, a lot of the breeds, people are breeding for better temperament. Because as a matter of fact, to somebody that had a flat coat, and Lisa, remember when we started, we had a lot of flat coats that were real skittish and very, very just worried. And now you see so many really nice ones that are friendly. They love people, and they're
how many years later, right?
Yeah, and this is what 17 plus years later, 20 years almost,
right? Right.
And that you've seen those breeders make those changes. And I think that's what, with breeders, if they really recognize some of the problems in their breed and they're trying to do better by them, I think that's a good place to start. But the hybrid dogs with like the doodles and stuff, Yeah, I mean, and as Tamara said, sometimes you get the best of both worlds, and sometimes you get, you know.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know if you guys have experienced, but I've seen a lot more skittishness in the doodle breeds.
Oh yeah.
Or the crosses.
Yep.
And I don't know, I'm not up. I'm honestly, I'm not up on that. I know a lot of people that are breeding things like right now. I'm part of this functional breeding group, and they're talking about breeding for was it a Cavalier to, I forgot what other breed, but to elongate the face for breathing purposes to kind of bring back the health, but also for the other crosses that are going on right now are Papillons to Mini Aussies, Border Collies to Papillons. I mean, there's a bunch of them, and they do it for different reasons. And I think a lot of it is just, some of them are more sporty. I have a friend of mine who's in flyball, and they do a lot of, like, she has a border staffy, a border collie.
Yeah, a lot of those
staffy. Yes. Yeah. But the problem is the structure, right? So you get that straight front. So when they're pounding on the box, then you're going to get breakdown on the shoulders, because that's really important to have good fronts. So, but with certain breeds, I mean, it depends what the goal is for the breeder. So I personally would say, you want to look at what that breeder is trying to breed for, and then still assess it, because temperament is temperament. It's not going to, I mean, there are some variations and things that can be adjusted, but for the most part, when you see these snapshots, what you're looking for is patterns of behavior to help you identify, is this the right dog for me?
Right. Yeah. And I'll just say this. So, I mean, to Mary's question, yeah, it's going to continue, because it has continued. Yes, the doodles are new, or not anymore, right? But I mean, just being in Dobermans, oh, those white ones are really cool looking. Oh, look, a fawn. Those are really cool looking. Everybody wants the Merle herding breeds. Everybody wants this, right? I was on a border collie site where they're producing like lilacs, and I mean, just random colors, right? And they call them rare. And people who don't know the breed, or they don't know better, these are purebreds, right? And I want that one because it looks a certain way. Yeah. So I think that will always happen, right? Yeah, which is kind of what we're trying to talk about tonight, right? I want a dog because of the breed. I want a dog because of the look. What really are we looking for?
Right. And then, so one of the things that you want to think about with, so for family pets, sociability is big, and trainability too. So it's easy for the people, but a lot of wanting to be with people and how they use space. They want to be with people. They're in a different place. For those of us in the propensity for resource guarding, we'll get to that. So Cheryl was asking about agility and nose work. If you want a dog for performance, just general performance, what you're looking for is the sociability becomes less important unless it's important to you personally. So, for example, I have a very social shepherd at the moment, and it's fine because I use him for work a lot, right? To work with my behavior cases and all that stuff. But for a performance dog, it's not. You can have a dog that you want a dog that's going to be okay with people and like people, but they don't have to necessarily love them and gravitate to them. There's levels, right? You want a dog that's okay being around people and all that, and then but you don't need them to be like, oh, I just want to be with you, right? So sociability for a performance dog isn't as important. Not that you want an antisocial dog, but it's not. You don't need that Vizsla one. You can have a little less of that, right? The other big thing, Cheryl, is resilience, that they can get over things quickly. If something scary happens, that they can be like, okay, what is that? And then be like, okay, and they can recover. That is actually the biggest problem I see in a lot of our performance dogs. And Joanne can speak to it, is they're not resilient. Something scares them, and then they're like, oh my God, I can't recover. And then people are, come on, you can do it. And it just becomes this horrible, so being able to recover a rebound from a worrisome situation, huge for a performance dog. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's a must have. Like, I want a dog, I want them to acknowledge it, but I still want them to be like, okay, and process it and move on. And the other, so sociability, resilience, and and trainability. You want a dog that's going to be able to be trained, that wants to work with you, that wants to do things with you, that is looking to work with you, and to a certain extent, a little bit of patience, right? Because they're not going to then do other things, and it's like they're gonna wait until you're ready to work, and they're gonna be there to wait, to be able to work with you. That would be ideal, right? In the perfect world. So I have a very patient dog that's resilient but very social, and I have a dog that's very resilient, but she's not super patient. So if I can't figure out what I want, she'll do other things, but she's always willing to work and come back and do it and work with you. She likes to work.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say if you're looking for a really high level performance dog, it sucks to live with, but you really want a lot of persistence.
That's correct.
And it sucks to live with, just telling you. So, right. That's the dog that's like, but I want it. You're like, don't do that, but I want to. Yeah. You need to stop, but I need to.
So I'm going to pick on Erin. Erin and Tom Resumer just got a lovely little boxer puppy. She's fantastic. I love her. She is busy. She's smart. She's not afraid of a thing. And she does have quite a bit of persistence. So she gets corrected by Cha-Cha, and she goes, okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, how about now? So which is wonderful for performance, right? Because it's like, okay, keep doing it. It's great to train, because she goes, okay, I'll do it again. I'll do it again. But at home, when you're like, stop that, she's gonna be like, okay, and back at it again. So there's a plus and a minus on those traits, right? It's things that you need to think about when you are looking for a performance dog. Yes. Yeah. And yeah, because the persistence is lovely when you're training, but when you're trying to live with it, it's not so much.
Right.
I remember one of the things that Fling is very persistent.
Oh yes. I remember it. Well, it was like three months or whatever. She was climbing that cat tree to get to treats on top of it.
She was.
And I'm like, I was on the phone with a client, and I'm like, hold on a second, my puppy's screaming, and I don't want it to die. But she was, Fling was, I loved her. I mean, she was a pain in the butt to live with, though. I mean, she also had high energy. She'd run everywhere. She didn't walk. She's like, no, let me run over here. And it was just annoying at times. But at the same time, now that I know it and I understand it, I wouldn't mind having that again. Right. To some degree.
And to a certain extent, right? That's the point, right? It's like you see that, you know that, and then you either want to deal with it or you don't. That's really what it comes down to, right? Do you deal with that, or do you not? And some of the things that some people are willing to live with, and it's different for all of us. So there's never a right or wrong answer. It's like, what are you willing to live with?
Lisa, I'll loan you the Doberman. So just to make sure you really want that again. So you can.
I do like my Dobes too. Even though Nancy and Amy put me in the fires with them initially. I was like, what was that guy? What was his name? Jim?
Alex.
No, Jim. No, Jim from that one show. They're like, and bring in Jim.
Go with the Dobermans.
Let Jim show you how to handle those dogs.
He's filing the outside.
Oh my God, that was crazy.
Yeah. But it's like you see as a young puppy, because Crimson's maybe 9 weeks, 10 weeks old.
12, I think they said.
Yeah, so. Or 12. But she was like, yeah, that was. She'll sit, think about it, and she'll just right back at it, which is going to be wonderful for them to train. She's going to be a joy. But at home, it's like, don't do that. She's like, okay, well, how about now? How about now? How about now? Now,
11
now.
weeks.
11 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things too, I think people haven't. I mean, we're talking about various traits and so forth, and I don't think people understand what traits there are. So maybe going into that in terms of, what, there's sociability, there's trainability or bitability, as I know it, energy, resilience, confidence in various situations. Then we talk about the dog to dog. So there's so many pieces. And I think when I talk to people, you have to say, what is it that you're looking for? And you have to dig deeper into that and say, okay, if your dog does this, how do you feel about that? You know, so you really have to drill down to what your lifestyle is to figure out what the dog needs. And that's why I think it's important to have a skilled person to help you read those behaviors and understand what's happening to help them select the right dog for them.
And the truth is, like with Erin,
Yes, Rizzy.
yeah, with Erin, one of the things with both her girls, the dog was chosen for them, and they already got the dogs. So it's also great to then kind of know who the dog is, so that you then know what you have and train them, right? And be able to adjust to what they're. So Erin with Vixen, she's a very highly aroused dog. So I told her, I go, and they like to do agility and all that. So one of the great things, agility is really hard for Vixen. She's coming along, but I told her it's going to be a challenge because she gets so high, she gets zoomies and stuff like that. Where in nose work, that arousal is serving her very, very well, because she's able to. It's just interesting how she's using it, right? That level of arousal is we saw it when they first got her. So, but they've learned how to adapt and how to work with that particular dog and get what they need from her, which is kind of one of the tricks. And Crimson, same thing. You already know, they already see some of the things that are going to be there for her, that she's going to need to, that are there for her for their training, how to address it and how to deal with it, and guide the dogs in the right way, right? So they can get the most that they can out of the dogs they have, even though they didn't get a chance to choose it, right?
Sure.
So that's important, right? So sociability is how they relate to people, and then this is one of the things you want, whether it's a shelter dog or a breeder, you want to meet the dog by itself, or with their buddies.
Yep.
You miss so much when you don't take them away.
Well, and it's interesting, when I've done that, they're like, oh my gosh, that's the bully of the group. And then you do the puppy stuff. When you do that, then they're like, they see them away from the litter, and then sometimes they're surprised. They're like, oh, I thought that dog would be a lot more confident. I'm like, no, it's not confident. And bullies generally, let's say, as a rule of thumb, they're not confident, period, whether it's a person or a dog.
That's true.
So they usually will just try to puff up and make themselves big in a group because they can, and that dynamic allows it. That's why it is important to definitely see them individually.
Right. Having a knowledgeable professional says, it helps you give you that training. So, and sociability, you really get to see, is a dog going to gravitate toward people naturally or not, whether it's a shelter dog or whether it's a puppy from a breeder, right? You always want to look at those puppies individually, not as a group. You can look at it as a group, but you're not getting a lot of the correct information.
Yeah. I mean, when and you hear it, and Lisa, I know you do a lot of shelter work now, but it's like, you hear it. I felt so bad for him. He was just sitting at the back of the kennel, and and when I finally came, he sort of came up, but he stayed behind everybody. It's like, that's not going to change most of the time.
Right.
That's what that dog is.
Right. So it was interesting. There was, you always see kinds of crazy stuff and so forth. There was a litter of pups that came in, and the pups were, they had traveled a long distance, and then they came out, and the interpretation when they came out was that they were really interested in interacting with the people. Well, the trip was long. They, I don't think that they stopped. So the dogs had urinated and defecated in their crate. So of course they're excited to get out. Then all their buddies around, they're like, yay, yay, thank God we're free. But then the next day I went to go see them. They were paired up, or there was like 4 in a crate or whatever. And they were all pushed to the back of the kennel. And I'm like, I don't think that's a good thing. So they stayed for a bit because it was hard placements and all that. And I have video of it, and I'm like, this dog does not enjoy touch. This dog is, going to be very difficult to place. And so, those are things that we all make mistakes. I remember Zoe was one. I was like, she's a little Papillon, and I got her from a pet store before I knew better. And she was all scared, and she was black and white because I always wanted a border collie, but, I didn't want to go that big. And okay, a Papillon, black and white Papillon, it looks like a border collie, but it's not, that kind of crap. And then And then I got her and she was a freak. I mean, she was like terrified, you know, things would go off and it'd scare her. She had to go on clomipramine because if she didn't stop panting and jumping and carrying on, she was going to have a heart attack. So, you know, you got to be careful. You know, I mean, I tell people every time, man, every single time you see a dog, if it doesn't come up to you, you don't want it. It's not a dog for you.
Right.
Especially depending on what your lifestyle is. Now, granted, everybody has different things. We all take different challenges on. But what concerns me the most is that when people go in blindly and selecting dogs just by what they look like and so forth, rather than the actual match. So
yeah, no, and it's one of those things. So you really want to. So the sociability for a family pet, like I said, for those performance folks, it's nice to have, but not a have to have. As long as they're good with you, you're good. So, and trainability, does the dog want to work with you? So when you have the dog, will the dog, follow you around? Will the dog, if you ask it to do something or sit, do you have to have treats? Do you have to, all those kind of things that, does it want to do stuff, not do stuff, but does it want to interact with you and work with you and do things, right?
And if the dog doesn't seem to be super stressed and is in a situation and you have a cookie and the dog's like, nope.
Yep.
It's going to be a tough sell if you're going to try and train the dog, right?
Right. Deborah Evans had said, for shelter dogs, would you recommend fostering before adopting? It depends on so the shelter environments or any kind of brick and mortar building where rescues are very challenging because, that poses passing dogs, so forth, and how they have it set up. And remember, they can present differently in the shelter than in a home setting. So fostering before adopting would be great, but I would still recommend somebody help you find the right idea of the dog, right? Before you foster. And then when you foster, you can see different things because, again, I've seen it and I've heard about it where a dog may exhibit resource guarding in the shelter, but they go home and they don't do it. So although, and to me, there's a level of concern for that, I think there's still a potential. It would be just up on my radar. It doesn't mean it's going to be a problem, but it's up on my radar. It's information about who the dog is because I believe that relates to tolerance.
Right. And resource guarding, nobody really knows why some dogs resource guard and some don't. So one of the characteristics that are part of but you can also have a dog that exhibits those and not resource guard. But a dog that has low confidence, most of them are they resource guard. Dogs that are tolerance, like touch and all that, or being handled, that can be an issue as well. And arousal also is an issue, can be an issue with dogs that resource guard. But you can have dogs that have all those things and don't resource guard.
Right.
So it's really it's a tough one.
I know. I was telling you guys before we started. So there was a little pup that came in. She was 2 months old, and she was. So we did the little test to see and check it out, and part of our initial. So where I'm at, we do an initial assessment when they first come in, and then we wait a few days, and then we do a couple more assessments to find who the dog is. So this particular dog, during the initial assessment, we had the food down, and when we had the food down, she was fine. Her pace of eating was the same. She's eating. You step up, you step back. She didn't change any pace of eating. We went ahead. We went forward again, and then you do the pats on the back. She kind of muscled up a bit, and I was like, okay. And then when I went to go to the food bowl to touch with a hesitation, because everybody hesitates, like, are you going to bite me? I don't know. And so, can I have that? And so we do that. And then she started growling. And I was like, did she just growl to the girl, Kelsey, that was with me? And she goes, oh, she just growled. And I'm like, interesting. So then I did it again, and she growled again. And so then at that point, we ended up stopping. And I was like, okay, I mean, I didn't go much further because I'm like, I'm not here to push the dog, but I'm here to see what the dog is. So we got that dog into a behavioral foster home to work on that because the dog is 8-9 weeks old. So you can definitely do that at that point. Now, the foster home has been amazing And she's like, this is what I've done, because she's very experienced, and she's goes, this is what I've done, and now we're better, and this and that. And then now what she's done, she's gotten to the point where she can do it. So the dog is eating, she comes in, puts some really good tasty bits in the food. And she goes, initially she froze and growled, but now she's like, oh, hi, come on, put some stuff in, it's great. And then as the dog got better, now she's going to transfer it to other family members in the home, so that the dog can try to help the dog generalize.
Right.
So the other thing I think too is even fostering, if you're looking at rescue or shelter dogs, fostering is good, but they are in dire need of people who are willing to work with behavioral issues. And if there is a behavior department or somebody available to help you guide you through some of that stuff, and you're willing to do that, I mean, of course, I think that's still, it's still a, what do you call it? It's still a, kind of a interview process to make sure that they can handle the dog and what their experience has been anyway. So that's something else I think it's sorely missing in the rescue community.
Yeah. Well, and Deb, if you want a dog, because Deb is looking for a dog at some point, and you should give your list to Lisa, because she's in that world, and she might come across a dog that fits, and she can assess it for you, and life is good. Because that, that's helpful, right? Because sometimes, especially if you're not in a hurry, you could say, okay, this is what I want, and then they should be able to then assess it, and it's like, oh, I might have a fit for this dog, because it's kind of nice to be able to do that. So, because sometimes the dogs might come along, because not all dogs that are in rescue are bad dogs. Some dogs are just, they got the wrong partner, right? They're divorced and they need another one.
Not a good match.
They need a better one. That one didn't work out. They need a better one. And they're not bad dogs. It's just, that's just it just didn't work out, right? The dog is still fine and it's perfect for you. And and sometimes it's almost like that's what dogs are. Like, I have a little Indie there was nothing wrong with the dog. He was in a rescue in a kill shelter, and he's the nicest dog. There was really no issue with him at all. He was a great pet. He's been with me. He's 17 now, and he's still a feisty little thing. But there was really nothing wrong with him. He growls and carries on, but he never,
he does a lot.
Well, now he does more because he's old.
He's old and crotchety.
Yeah. But it's one of those. And then so for performance, so that and then arousal, the dog should be able to, the other thing you want, and this is for almost every, they should be able to get excited, but be able to come down very quickly, because that's the other problem. And this also speaks to rebound, or to get over things, because some dogs get aroused and they stay that way for a bit. And that's hard, because it's hard to then get them back. And as Joanne mentioned about eating, if a dog doesn't want to eat, or is too excited or too stressed to eat, that's a big tip off. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the other things people think that, well, if I have a dog who doesn't like, it's like I've gotten people asking about, oh, I want a service dog. And then they bring you the service dog. I'm like, that's not your service dog. That's a little too much energy. It's not really interesting. It's a little too sociable. It's dragging you everywhere. That's really not what you want in a service dog. So I think what people don't understand is what can be changed, right? What temperament traits can be affected, and how much will they go off to one side or another, depending. And because I don't know about you, well, when I started, I got Simon. Simon, by the grace of God, is 15, and he's still kicking.
And he's
Simon
been dead for a long time.
Simon, I don't know if he's ever going to die. I love him, don't get me wrong. But, life is more difficult when you have those dogs that want to bite people, that come over to your house, and you have to put them up and then walk them on a leash in order to, potty them past everybody. And, although he's not as fast as he was, structurally and just health age-wise, he's not as fast as he was very difficult to live with. And it took him 2 years to not bite my husband, and he's 15, and I've been married for 27 years. And that was fun. And then I had 2 stepsons involved as well. So that posed another issue as well, right? Complication family issues. So I don't have a problem with those dogs, but there's a place for them if you're interested in actually, working that. prefer not to anymore because I want my dogs to get along and be okay with being around people.
Yeah, that's right. Simon and Nipper did actually.
Yeah, Simon, Nipper, and Nipper actually, it was Nipper, remember Nipper and Kelly?
Yes.
Remember Kelly? They kind of turned him on to Shepherd. So then I finally got him his own Shepherd, and he's really not interested in her. So.
I think I'm going to make an appointment with Lisa and see if she can assess Bam to be a service dog.
Oh my God.
No, I can tell you right now, based upon what you're saying, no.
Service dog. So that's the other thing. And for therapy work, that's the other thing. You can have the dog should not be environmental. And if you want your dog to be due to a therapist, cannot be environmentally sensitive, and has to be sociable, and have to have like to be handled. If they don't like those three things, forget it. And I cannot tell you how many therapy dogs I see that are like, oh, okay, it's enough touching.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah.
And I think
if you're going to have a really, really high energy dog, then you know what I mean? You got to have real good obedience on them because, right? Don't be pulling people's wires out of their arms. So.
Oh my, that would be fun.
So happy to see you. Yay!
Right. All right. It's true. So those are some of the things. So I know Joanne, Lisa, and I all assess dogs on a pretty regular basis. I did a lot of rescue assessments early on, and but more recently I do assess a lot more puppies and performance dogs just because of that's kind of my world at the moment. And I do some assessments for shelter and for our clients that are looking for another dog. So I don't do as much rescue. And Joanne does. Would you say the same?
Yeah, I the shelter calls me sometimes now. So I still do a little bit of shelter work and rescue work, but most of the time it's clients, a lot of them that would come in for, behavior assessments, just something's a problem or, what kind of dog is this? So.
Yeah. And Lisa is doing a lot more rescue assessments, in the shelter environment, which is a lot different.
Oh, it is.
Because we were doing a lot of assessments at our facility or at other facilities where people were bringing the rescue dogs to us. But doing it in shelter is a little more, it's a little different. And one of the things that we're seeing a lot of, and I know Lisa and I have talked about it quite a lot. A lot of these people are adopting out dogs that shouldn't be adopted out.
Mm-hmm. I know right now with the rescue I'm working with, they have a list of owner returns or owner surrenders, I should say, 30 deep, 30 people deep right now. And it is insane. And then also it's like, I think, honestly, my personal opinion is too many dogs went home without having, understanding of who they were. And then everybody was like, hey, yes, go, let's send them home. It's better for them to be in a home than in a shelter, which is perfectly appropriate. But what happened was when we started opening up, then people were like, oh, this dog really doesn't like to be out on a leash, or it's terrified, or it wants to go after other dogs. And that's really tough. I mean, I had a lady the other day that I spoke with, and this is my passionate part comes out. I spoke with this lady the other day. She said, I don't know what to do with this dog. This dog, the perfect storm happens always because management fails. Yeah. The dogs were barking at the window because they saw a small dog passing in the picture window. One of the children opened up the door and didn't know. That dog took off out and grabbed the small dog. Multiple punctures in its body. I mean, the dog ended up having to go to the hospital, but then they were like, oh my gosh, we can't have this. And their poor kids, their young children saw this. And I'm like, this is horrible. This is terrible. And so she was upset and she's like, I could have done more. I'm like, no. And then after speaking with her, she shared with me that she saw that early on, but she said, I can deal with it. I can work it. And so the sad part about that was that stuff could have been seen had it been properly looked at. And these people could have been saved. So now my concern is, does this spoil them on looking at other rescues? Because rescue is not bad. It's, I have a couple rescues myself. So, it's just, it's really upsetting to me because, and she was blaming herself. And I said, sometimes it's a temperament issue. You can't stop that, so that part is why I stay doing the rescue and the shelter work. A lot of people get into training dogs because they say, I like dogs more than I like people. During COVID and through all this process, I realized I really do like people, and I really don't want to see people harmed and hurt the way that I've seen happening. And it is very near and dear to my heart. So.
Yeah, well, and one of the things, it's like the rescues do make the people, well, if they wouldn't have only have not done that, I go, well, no.
Yes, there's a lot of blaming.
Yeah, but the problem is you can do that to 100 dogs and they're not going to bite you. So it's, you can, let's say, well, they shouldn't have taken his bone away. Well, there's a lot of dogs you can take the bone away and they're fine, right? And they won't bite you, or they won't do whatever. So it's like, no, that's not a good temperament for that particular dog. And yes, Lisa is awesome. Whoever.
Oh, stop it.
Well, here's the thing, and this is a discussion that I've had with both of these ladies, not together, but it's like, we do what we do with dogs because we really are genuinely passionate about it.
Yes.
And the burn, because usually our profession, they burn out really fast.
Yeah.
Because it is emotionally difficult.
It is very difficult.
It is very emotionally difficult, but we keep doing it because we love the people, we love the dogs, and any way we can help out is what it's all about, right?
Yeah, and we're all human. I mean, I'll share a story from Lisa way back in the day. I had a little Doberman, and he never grew to like good size, which should have been a clue right there. But I was still a little new, and he had gotten dog aggressive, all of a sudden, right? He was only 14 months old, I think, and he just all of a sudden made a real shift, and it was weird. And Lisa, I remember calling her, and I did a private with her, and man, we were at the farm, and I was at the other side of the building, which is what, 150
Oh
feet?
yeah, because it's a huge ring. Yeah,
and she opened the door, and my dog, and I was like 10 minutes, my dog was just blah 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 blah. And you know what, I respected her very, very much, because she goes, I can't help you, like I don't, there's nothing I can do right now to make anything better. And it sucked in the moment, right? But you're like, it's somebody who doesn't keep trying on something that they're not sure about. You know what I mean? Like, she basically told me, this is beyond me. I don't know what else to do. And it was just such a respectful moment of, don't try and make things up that you're not sure about. Like, you have to go see somebody that knows more than I do. And it was lovely. So
yeah. And one of the things is we, we learned a lot, like trial and error and figuring it out. Right. But that's just something that we just we do it because we want the better for the dogs and the people. And now that's why the word relationship is used so loosely. Yep. But it's no different than when you have a relationship with a person, and there's qualities you're going to love about that person, and there are qualities about that person that you may not like so much. So the big thing is, the good qualities worth dealing with some of the bad stuff, right? Because dogs, people, nobody's perfect. So when you're looking for a dog, it's like, are you willing, like, the dog does this, are you okay with that? Right? Are you okay with that? Is that okay for your lifestyle? And if you have, or if this, or some, what are the haves to haves? You really want to know those things. So,
somebody destroying the area over there.
Oh, Noah is retrieving everything. We have a sea of stuff around us because he's like, yeah, Nancy's here, so she's gonna bring all kinds of stuff.
Oh my goodness.
It's so funny. I'm like, so, is again, are those things you want to live with? Yeah.
Nancy would return him. She's like, I don't like that. Stop it. Go lie down.
Yes.
He's too busy.
I know. Can I
All
have
right.
that?
So those are some of what are some of the things that do you guys have any questions now? Temperament. And so I think Tamara had typed in good temperament is something that you want. Well, what is that? Good
Right.
temperament is what you want, like friendly, that's not worried about a lot of stuff. And yeah, everybody wants those perfect dogs. And sometimes you can have a dog, like I'll give you an example. My lab, Jive, she's not noise sensitive, but I noticed when I assessed her as a puppy, when I closed the X pen, it made a noise and she went, whoa, but she recovered right away. So that's okay. And
Right.
she lives in a very noisy environment, so I figured she'll get over that pretty quick. But she was able to get over that little scare in that moment really fast at 8 weeks old. So I go, okay, I can work. You can work with that. That's something that's, it's doable. You can deal with it, right? Versus a dog that just can't recover from it. That noise would have just put him over the edge and would have never been able to, get past it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think sometimes too, you have to really consider what is it. So when Joanne talked about her dog and then having that big issue at such a big distance, that's huge. And, now going back, what I would say is get that dog so into you that nothing else matters, right? So, hand feeding it and so forth. But even then, you're going to be in management mode because it was such a huge degree. And, those are things you have to consider. It's like, how big of an issue is it? Like Nancy was saying, how big of an issue is it? And then how much work you're willing to put into it? Because I can get an independent dog and make the dog so honed in on me. I mean, Ivy, when I first got her, she hated being handled. So she was hungry and I'm like, guess what? I'm going to make you, you're going to be handled and we're going to work on this. And we got through it. And this dog, I mean, I can have her off if I wanted to have her off leash in a class setting and having her hang out and so forth, she would do that. But I chose to put that kind of work in her. So everybody's different to what degree you want to go. And I think, setting expectations when you're selecting dogs is super important.
Right. Yeah. And I will just say that dog ended up being very, very ill and he didn't live, more than 6 months after that. So I think all three of us, at least through all of our trials and tribulations, have understood when you see behavior that's that weird.
Yeah.
A lot of times there's a medical issue behind it.
Right.
Which I don't think, it took a while to get there, right? To understand those types of things. But, when you see something that's off the charts strange, take them to a vet, right? Because dog trainers can only do so much if there's we're not trained for that. So there's a huge piece of the medical world that is good for checking temperament as well, right? Making sure everything's lined up and good to go.
So Jen, third marriage analogy, what we can put up with, what amazes us, and how do they adapt?
Yep.
Maybe this is a dog who can sleep in my bed. Amen, sister. Absolutely right. Because we all, and that's what I mean. It's not. I think when we first started training a long time ago, it's like, no, the dog should be this. No, the dog is whatever you're willing, what works for you and your family and your family and your lifestyle, right? Certain things that it would be very difficult for me to have a dog in my current lifestyle for right now. It would be very difficult for me to have a dog that's really scared and worried and skittish that I want to do performance with. I'll be honest, my lifestyle wouldn't allow it, right? I don't have the ability, the time, and to be able to deal with that right now in my lifestyle, right? I could maybe. Can I deal with probably a higher energy dog, a little busier? Probably. I'd be okay to be able to, I could figure it out. So those are things you want to think about, like, what can I deal with? And as we get older, those things will change. What we can handle and what we can't handle will be.
I am less tolerant, I have to say, as I get older for many things, not just dog stuff, but people crap too.
Yeah. And, where I live, I think we have bigger yards and we can have quieter spaces, right? So what you can deal with and what the dog can deal with are two totally different things. So if you see this noise sensitive dog and you're like, I'm going to work with them, and you live in a high rise in downtown Chicago, like the dog might be like, good for you. I'm not having a good time here. Right. Yeah. So you have to take those things into consideration as well.
So Dave, this is a wonderful segue to
Yes.
what we're going to chat about really quickly. We a lot of the assessments out in the world really lump the characteristics in big buckets.
Yes.
So they're not. There's pros and cons to both. They're at the moment, and Lisa can speak to it more. They're better than nothing, but there's a lot of things that aren't addressed. Like when we talk about sociability, trainability, and all that, those are all things that come from Suzanne Clothier's temperament test
Right.
that she developed, which unfortunately there's only a few people who can do those, but that is the most comprehensive, if you will,
Yes.
that really looks at the whole dog and all the different characteristics. And because she slices a lot of those traits into thin slices, but some of the other ones are big buckets. So there's things that are missing. So if Lisa, I think Dave was talking about the Volhard. So
Sure.
I only used it once or twice. This was, remember when we first started doing assessments, and that was a long time ago. But I think they put the dog under a lot of that test puts a lot of pressure on those puppies. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes. I mean, in my opinion, I feel that it does actually. I'm just looking up as we talk. It seems to have. It breaks it up into like. How do I open that? I'm trying to open it to see it because I haven't messed with that I haven't done that particular test in quite some time, but it is a chunky test, right? So it's not slicing things down individually. And when we talk about the traits, like sociability or persistence or arousal or resilience, all those things, the reason why we do that has more to do with the fact that we have learned. I mean, I am so grateful that I learned a lot of that based upon the experience that I had with Nancy, because I had access to so much information. So I'm forever grateful for that, because that molded me as a trainer and as somebody coming into behavior stuff. But the Volhard test is kind of like, it does put a lot of pressure on dogs, and I don't feel that it really identifies the small bits that are really important. So there's other tests too. So there's the bark test. And the bark is like down and dirty, and it's basically there's not a lot of choice. Okay, there's a part where they call it dominance, where you press on the dog's back and see what the dog does. And I'm like, I don't understand why, but I guess it's a handability issue. So or a kinesthetic type of thing. I get that, but and then there's the safer test that the ASPCA had put out. And the safer test is not a test that I would recommend doing with, say, a brand new dog. So around here, there are polls from local shelters that are coming out of the city. And some of those dogs, like one of the tests for safer is you sit there with the dog between your feet or between your knees, and you're face to face with it. I'm like, I wouldn't barely do that with my own dogs. I mean, I love my dogs, but I will barely do that with them. So if I'm not doing that with a brand new dog I just met. If the dog's like, don't look at me, I'll be like, okay, we're good. Let's move on. So I guess you have to look at the quality of the test and what you're looking for. I don't feel that there's only a handful of tests that I feel. So in the shelter situation, there's the Assess-a-Pet, which I think the Assess-a-Pet is pretty good. It basically it's weeding out safety dogs that are safe to be placed and so forth.
Right.
For temperament testing for puppies and stuff like that, there is Suzanne Clothier's Carrot. There is Avidog, which is very similar, which, whatever. And, there's a variety of tests that are out there. But I think what's most important is, this is the thing that I don't think people understand, trainers that come out of get certifications, they don't have to understand behavior. All they have to do is have mechanics. And what I think what's really important is that if you're looking for a trainer that can really help you progress with your dog that you're having issues with, they need to really understand the behavior aspect of it. Otherwise, you're spinning your wheels. And mechanics are one thing, right? But understanding who the dog is and what their needs are and whether or not it complements what you are looking for is what's critical. So one of my things too now, I mean, it was initially when we first started, that I got into the behavior stuff and saw all these people. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so exciting and so interesting. And I feel my fire has been rekindled now because I've taken a break from certain things and gone back to learning more. And it's just made me more passionate about helping people understand behavior. Not that I'm perfect. I mean, by a stretch, I am not. But I find that a lot of people can't read behavior and they interpret it a different way than what the dog is actually presenting.
Right.
Yep.
And we see it a lot, especially in the performance world.
Right.
And that's one of the things we're hoping with some of these Facebook Lives and some of the things we do is to help people really get to know and understand their dogs. Because like, oh, he just doesn't want to do that. He's just stubborn. Well, no, actually, there's reasons.
Right.
why they're not doing it or why they are doing that. Or, usually if a dog is doing a behavior, you always want to ask why. Why is a really key question in dog training.
Why are they doing it? And how are they feeling about it? Because I think a lot of times when people say, oh, they're just, oh, they just don't like that or whatever. I'm like, well, there's a reason for it. And maybe it's not comfortable for the dogs and that's why they're responding that way. So
right.
For sure.
All right, guys, we can go on about this forever and all that, but we are we're at the end of our session here, and we will maybe do something else along, and Lisa and I are doing a workshop in September on reading dog body language. That's going to be a little bit more for all dogs, whether it's performance or whatever. So that's one of the things that we are both very passionate about, have been forever, and one of the things we want to be able to start doing more of, to have just really it is for people to understand each other and really see what they're seeing and being real clear about it. So anyway.
Great. Thank you all. It's been fun. We can talk dog forever.
Yes, we can.
It's great rekindling. I haven't seen Lisa in many years. So
I know. Good. Well, I'm sure hopefully we'll get together. We'll all get together sometime. That'll be good.
Yep, yes. Exactly. All right, Lisa, hold on one second.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.